Hi there, welcome to Floating in Books. Today's video is going to be my reading wrap-up of 2023. Welcome to everybody watching today. Thank you so very much for joining me. This is going to be a quick little update of all of the books that I read in 2023 and sort of give you my full thoughts and lowdown. People were already asking me if I was going to do this video. I usually do them in the new year because I sometimes still have Christmas break and then I can get some reading done. Unfortunately, I was ill all the way leading up to Christmas, so I didn't get any reading done. So I had hopes that I could still get to 40 books. I didn't quite manage that. I managed 37 books in total, and here is the lowdown. I'm just going to be using my Goodreads reading challenge. There is always a link in the description box down below to my Goodreads as well, so if you want to follow me on there, I'm sort of going around the year. If you're on there as well, then you can. So I read a total of 37 books, as I mentioned. I have read 13,517 pages, which is not that bad, actually, because there have been years where I actually made it to 50 books, which is always my reading goal. I always set it to 50. I never make it because I felt the year I did make it, I made an effort to read a lot of short books, but that just means that you don't really put the effort into any longer reads that you might have, which I thought was a bit like it just meant I wasn't reading a lot of the books that I actually really look forward to reading sometimes. And that year I read like 18,000 pages. So I think that I did, like, when it comes to like the actual page count in the number of books that I read, that is pretty decent. So I'm pretty happy with that. The shortest book I read was just under 100 pages. It was 96 pages. And the longest book I read was 960 pages. So close to 1,000. So the shortest book I read was a Dutch book. It was actually the free book you get when you buy a book during the Dutch Book Week by Lise Spit, De Eerlijke Vinder. And it was actually quite an enjoyable story. I did like it. And the longest book I read was Robert Galbraith's The Running Grave. And that's just one of the things that I know I will not read. Like, I won't read tomes of 500 pages or more if I'm very, very set on making it to 50 books a year. So I know that without making too much effort, I can read between 25 and 30 books in a given year. So like a book every 2 weeks or so. That's sort of like my natural reading pace. And the reason why I set my goal to 50 is to get myself to just read a little bit more. But I have no means of truly making it. Most years I read around 40, 41, 42 books. 45 if I'm lucky. Like, if I throw in a lot of graphic novels, and if I were someone who enjoys reading to, like, listening to audiobooks at double the speed, I'm sure I could very easily up my numbers, but I'm just here to enjoy what I read, and I'm not really here for the numbers game. The average length of the books I read this year is 365 pages. So I think that's pretty decent. That's like an average novel is somewhere between 300 and 350 pages, 400-ish. So my reading pace was very much like aimed at reading quite regular sized books. So nothing too short, just to get me going. The most shelved book I've read is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I always think she's called the other way around, Garcia Moreno, but it's Moreno Garcia. And this was really successful for me. I really liked it. It's really rekindled my love for all things Gothic. And I think in 2024, I want to make myself like a mini Gothic reading challenge where every once in a while I try to read or reread some of my favorite Gothic reads. And the least read book, least shelved book that I listened to, actually, because this was an audiobook, is Charlotte Labey's Brain Palace. And Charlotte Labey is like a Dutch wellness guru, you could say. She has a platform where she advises people to how to work on their mental health and doing all that. Her book was also not that great. It was very much a book that tried to sell you her 10-step program without saying what the 10-step program was, because then you need the subscription, you know what I mean? And it had a lot of her personal anecdotes of how she got to where she wanted to be. And I don't know, these like self-help books never quite do it for me, because they're always they're always just a little like lacking. I feel like it's never like truly scientific, and I don't know. It's just, it wasn't really for me. My average rating was only 3.3. I'm not a 5-star read kind of generous person anyway. Like, I know some people who review books are only rating things 4 and 5 stars because they love everything they read. And I'm like, a 3-star for me is like, this is a good book. 4 is great. 5 is best thing I've ever read. And something that really truly stays with me. Books like that, I would give 5 stars. But therefore, a lot of books end up being 3 stars for me because a lot of books are pretty decent. Like, they're good, but they're not the books that I would like to keep on my shelf long term, or they were enjoyable enough, but not something that I'm going to be recommending to friends and family. So that to me is just like, I view the rating system a little bit differently than most people, I think. The highest rated book on Goodreads was The Running Grave, that has a 4.6 average. And then I think it just highlights a couple of things here. Yeah, I think I may have actually, I should have a look at the full list here. Yeah, so that Brain Balance book for me was only 2 stars. I think the book with the most stars that I only gave 5 stars to this year is Benedict Jacka's Faded. And this is an urban fantasy story. It's the first book in a series. The main character is called Alex Veras, and he runs a shop for magicians, essentially, and he can do magic, and it's like about like the magic society, and there's a cheeky little reference to the Dresden Files by Jim Butcher, which is another one of my favorite urban fantasy series as well. Need to get back into that, actually. They are just really fast-paced, very cinematic, like written stories, like the Ben Aronovich Peter Grant series, and then this one as well. I just really, really enjoyed it. And then 4 stars. Didn't I give this 5 stars, or was it 4? Another 5-star read for me this year was Jade City by Fonda Lee. I've been raving about this ever since I read it. This book was such a slow burn. And here's why. Again, if I were to DNF more, I could read more books, because what a lot of people seem to do who get to like 100 books a year is that they DNF something the minute they don't like something. This was a book that if I had that mindset, I would have DNF'd, because it took 200 to 300 pages to really get going. But here's the thing. Very often, these books that take a little while to get going and then end up being really great for me are some of my all-time favorite reads. One of my all-time favorite books is American Gods by Neil Gaiman. That book was terrible for the first 300 pages because it's just sort of like setting up the scene. And then I'm like, if you're never going to work hard for these kind of things, you're also not going to be rewarded. So I think that if you DNF too quickly, that may also not work. I DNF books for sure. I DNF things, but it has to be really, really dreadful for me for not to like it. And it's a fantasy story, but it feels kind of real because the setting could be something like Singapore or Hong Kong. It kind of feels like an Asian sort of city. And in this city, we have green bones who can manipulate jade. They wear jade to enhance their powers, and they go to school for this. You need to be of a certain lineage to be able to do this. And they kind of rule the city as the mafia would. So there are these 2 feuding factions that are sort of like going against each other, and we follow one of them. And they have this like entire family with granddad at the top, and then the son who followed him, and his brother and his sister, and how they sort of become the masters of the grand plan, and at the same time this other faction is trying to like undermine them and do all these things. And it's about how they manipulate government and how they sort of like rule parts of the city and what their territory is like. It gets very bloody and gruesome at very many parts of the book. There are some really, really great plot twists in this that don't feel cheap, and a plot twist for the sake of being a plot twist. The plot twists are there to move the narrative forward and to keep us interested and on our toes, because nothing in this world is for certain, and I'm definitely going to be finishing this series in 2024. Like, I cannot wait to read the second book. Yeah, I think most of it was like 4 stars. So things like Mexican Gothic was 4 stars. If We Were Villains were 4 stars. Nettle and Bone, which is something I listen to on audio. Very often audiobooks aren't that successful for me. So Nettle and Bone being an audiobook and being 4 stars is quite special to me, I think. And then there were just a whole host. Oh, I think Red Sister got 4 stars as well. Let me see. I keep clicking in and out of it. Yeah, so the first book in the Red Sister, like Blood of the Ancestor trilogy, was a 4-star read for me as well. That series really went downhill as it progressed. Sign of the Devil, which was the last book in a series I have been reading for years, for 4 stars. I think I gave 4 stars to Yellowface by R.F. Kuang, which was another book that I read on audio. And yeah, that was a 3-star read. That was okay. This Is How We Lose the Time War was a sci-fi I read this year that was really good. But I felt it was a bit like, I know, it was just focused around a romance between 2 androids, which, I don't know. Then The Atlas Paradox by Olivia Blake. I like the second book better than I did the first one, which was unexpected because I usually don't love multiple POV kind of stories, because I feel that the shifting of the point of view really makes it difficult for me to really get into the story. So yeah, I had a pretty decent reading year. I definitely read a lot of things I liked. Some of the letdowns this year that were still okay, like they were still good. But the third book in the Mistborn trilogy by Brandon Sanderson, I haven't read Brandon Sanderson since reading The Hero of Ages, because everybody raves about how good the world building is in Mistborn, and I felt it was very lacking. I just felt there wasn't a lot of world building going on, especially not in the third one, and for a lot of people it's their favorite book. The first one, Mistborn, like the first book in the Mistborn trilogy, I loved. The second and the third, I also read The Well of Ascension this year as well. Both of them I just thought didn't really do much for the storyline at all. I couldn't connect to the characters the way I did in the first story, so there was that. I pretty enjoyed, again, it was only a 3-star read for me, but my year in Rest and Relaxation was actually pretty decent. Same with Bunny by Mona Awad, but both of those books did things that I had read in other books before. So I think that if you'd never read those books, I think you'd like them a lot better than I did, but because I majored in English literature, so something like Mona Awad's Bunny has elements of like American Psycho to it that I read years ago. Same thing with my year of Rest and Relaxation. It very much reads like The Lives and Confessions of an Opium Eater, I think it's called. It's very much that, so I didn't love that. Another book that a lot of people always raved about, and that's why I listened to it, was A Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee, I think. The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue. This felt so contrived. It's pretending to be a historical fiction novel, but like edgy, and it was absolutely ridiculous. And also very much raved about Legends and Lattes. I read this as a physical copy. I tried to listen to it in audio, but couldn't get into it because the author was reading it, and I didn't like his voice. But Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldry is about an orc who gives up her killing spree and decides to start a coffee shop in a world where nobody knows what coffee is. And it's very much process, and that's what keeps you reading, but that doesn't necessarily make it good. So those are all the books that I read. This is like my little wrap up, my year in review. If there's anything else you want to know, just leave me a comment down below, ask me the questions. But yeah, those were some of my least and like most favorite books of the year. So if you were to read anything from this year, I would say Benedict Jacka's The Faded series, Jade City by Fonda Lee, and Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. That would be like my top 3 picks of the year if I had to look at this entire list. Those are the 3 where I'm like, yes, those were very much worth it. So yeah, thank you so very much for joining me here today. That is my little reading wrap-up of the year 2023. I really hope you enjoyed watching today's video. Thank you so very much for joining me. I will be back with 1 video a week over on this channel, so if you'd like to stay tuned. Next week will be my non-bookish end-of-year favorites that also aren't makeup. So like TV series and movies that I've watched. So I still need to go through my Netflix watch list because I haven't done that in a while. So yeah, thank you so very much for joining me. Thumbs up this video if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more by me. I make several videos every single week over on my main channel, once a week on here. So hope to see you next week. Bye-bye.